Nick and I were just discussing how some things never change. And one of those things is a Tuesday, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Congruity 360 YouTube channel. You can find this thought invoking live stream that is titled Congruity Corner. And the idea of this live stream, you guys, is to have long form transparency and talk about a technology company, a data management company in a way that the industry has never seen before. And I can say, as we approach double-digit episodes, I think we are on the road to accomplishing that. We want to talk about complicated, detailed issues, solutions, and topics, but make it in a digestible, consumable, and entertaining way. If that sounds good to you guys, please interact with the video. That could be hitting the thumbs up to show YouTube you like this content. This can be chatting. This can be saying hello to people. It can be throwing a question in the chat that you've been wondering. It can be sharing the stream. There's so many ways to give back for free and to get involved. Careful, you might enjoy it, so go easy on that one. And today, we had to run it back. We do have a great guest next week, you guys. Promise it's going to be insane. And we've got some guests within Congruity that we're hopefully lining up in the near future as well. So stay tuned there. But today, to run it back, it is myself, it is Nick, and we're going over some topics and questions that were inspired by you guys. Some of them directly, and then some of them you guys posed a topic, and then we molded it into something we can use for today. My name is Dan, Bearded online. I do YouTube stuff for a living. I talk to people. I ask questions. I am the maestro of live streams, and this is absolutely one of my bright spots of the week. I plan around this. I love this. I learn about this. I infuse this into my day-to-day life, and I'm so proud to be working with Congruity and this man over here. We were just talking about all of his eclectic hobbies and interests and understandings, and we'll get there, I'm sure. But if you guys could help me welcome the online guru, the doctor of time and space himself. That is true, by the way. The doctor of time and space himself, Mr. Nick Phelps. Nick, how are you on this humid, hot, insane Tuesday in America?
Oh man, I'm loving it. Bring on the
Oh, that's
heat.
right.
Bring on that humidity. Bring it on with their helicopter. I love it. Until it gets to triple digits, and then I'm kind of like questioning my existence about why I say such nice things about hot weather.
That's right.
Yeah, but no, we haven't got the worst of it though yet. And I'll tell you, it's
what?
No, we're supposed to get the worst of it of the heat dome. We're supposed to get it on Thursday.
Of course, we forget.
Our bad day. Yeah. So you're probably tomorrow is going to be your worst day, right? Or is
we're in it right now for the next 3 days.
Is it okay? So yeah. So you guys got it first, and it kind of spreads our direction, I guess. What's crazy though is I was watching this morning, and oh yeah, look at you're creeping up there, 92. You probably got a feels like a what, 100?
Yeah, 100 to 105. And we have today high at 93, tomorrow 95, Thursday 95. And yeah, the heat index is silly. Humidity of 60% right now, and it's 2:00. We're still building. Like it's cooking.
Oh yeah.
Cooking.
It's getting there, man. What's crazy is I was watching the weather this morning, and it was like Western Massachusetts. By Wednesday, Thursday, it's approaching 110 of a feels like is what they were saying. But Marshfield in the Cape Coast where we are here, if you kind of go from I'd say, Hull in Massachusetts down to Cape Cod in Massachusetts. And for those of you unfamiliar with the names of Massachusetts, it's this part right here. So it's the arm. And so if you, that's kind of where we are, is right north of that. And it's not supposed to even break 85. Is on against the water.
Oh yeah, you have that weird weather anomaly because of how it's structured.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a really weird little microclimate. So in the rest of even Boston is supposed to hit triple digits, and we're barely going to be breaking 90 degrees here in Marshfield, it looks like. So if the weather's right, we could end up creeping into the 90s, and then it's gets nasty. But it's being so close to the water and being Cape Cod Bay, it's like I like it because it stays kind of like that it never spikes up to get as hot as the rest of the state does. So it's a nice relief.
Okay. Now, question for the chat, you guys, if you don't mind getting involved. And I know a lot of people listen podcast style, like secretly at work, so no pressure. But what's the high temp in your area today? And if you don't mind sharing where you're at, please do. Shout out to Christopher, Jill, Daryl, Leo, Stuart in the house. Anybody else? Drop a comment where you are located, and you don't have to be specific, and share what is the high temperature in your area. Nick and I have figured out the weather patterns over the years really well. It's about a 2-day delay. Whatever weather we get in Michigan, East Coast gets it about 2 days later.
Yep. And then, interestingly enough, in the chat, I actually learned something about climate in general from someone that's in the chat here, from Stuart. I had no idea that Washington State was quite as diverse as it is from like just a climate standpoint. You think of the Pacific Northwest and you think rain, and you think cool, foggy, pine trees, it's like mountains. For some reason, everyone's view of the Pacific Northwest is only the Puget Sound area.
Seattle.
Right? Yeah, it's Seattle. Exactly. Right. So he's on the, he's far away from that in the Yakima Valley. Hope I'm saying that right. And he's in the Yakima Valley, and it's like desert. He gets like around an inch of rain a year. It's like a desert climate. It barely ever rains. But yet, and so they grow tons of like hops and all kinds of, just it's stuff that you wouldn't think of in like an arid climate, being in Washington State. I had no idea. He was filling me in on what they have out there, and it's just so different from what I expected.
Yeah, perspective is wild on that because, for example, I always did this with my middle school students. I would say, all right, guys, the history of recorded temperatures on planet Earth. Think about all the areas that we think are like really hot and like really gotta be careful because of the desert and the heat and danger. And I was always like, where is the hottest temperature ever recorded? And students never got it unless they had visited there. And not to put you on the spot, but do you know the hottest recorded temperature location on Earth?
Not even going to pretend to guess. No. I mean,
California.
It's not Death Valley, is it?
Death Valley, California, USA.
Is it really?
Death Valley. And you hear that, you're like, oh, okay. But you're telling me Saudi Arabia, you're telling me
that's
Iran,
what I mean.
Iraq, the desert of the outback of Australia. No. California, United States of America. That's crazy.
So like that checks out in Death Valley. I don't know. So I've lived really close to it. I'm wondering how is it a part of it or not? No, it's not. It's near it. So it's located in the Central Valley Riverside. Okay. Oh, okay. I gotcha. So I lived in like the Palm Springs, Palm Desert area for a little while, which is apparently no, it's not. And so but I mean, even those deserts, which is a different section of desert from Death Valley. I mean, we'd have like back then we didn't have feels like temperatures on the news. It was just the temperature. We just had the weather. We didn't have this touchy feely weather that we got now,
sensitive weather,
the sensitive weather where we care about its feelings. No, but it would get like 110, 112, it would creep up there just on the thermometer. It was
interesting. And
what's the hottest temperature ever recorded? What was it?
134 degrees, if I remember correctly. Fahrenheit.
34 degrees.
134. Like we're cooking something.
Wow.
That's crazy. And yes, Stuart said today in is it the Yakima Valley? Yakima Valley. 81, but then 90s. Yeah, I don't think of that when I think of Washington.
No, you don't. And especially just like I had no idea there was a desert landscape in Washington.
Yeah, right. You guys aren't just all rain. Hey, Jim. AOD.
What's up, Jim?
Welcome, everybody.
Guys.
TJ, hello. I love it. So, yes, awesome. And then quick tech question here. As a live streamer, I know that weather can impact my live streams because of the YouTube headquarters. And the most common situation would be storms. If there's big storms going on, my live streams are likely going to lag and delay. Is there something with heat and humidity that would impact like a technology location? Like, would there be a rule of thumb like, hey, you can't have a data center near this humidity or this level of heat, or is that a non-factor with stuff being inside and insulated and everything today?
No, that's a non-factor as far as like the central location of where things live for the most
Yeah.
part. It's all so climate controlled, and it's, but I
Okay.
will say the last mile, as they say, is impacted by weather for sure. So where fiber and coax and all your other wiring cables, whatever type you might be riding on, whenever those come out of the ground and onto a pole, that pole and the boxes there are not temperature controlled, right? And I mean, they are industrial grade pieces of equipment in there that are made to sit in the sun. But it's not to say that when it gets really humid and really hot or really just inclement weather of some sort, that those thin metal cases or plastic cases that are holding in your Fios network gear, for example, if you have Verizon, Fios with fiber optics, right? I mean, those things are lasers, they're little transceivers, and they're shooting light across glass. And so they get hot all on their own. So if you get hot weather and it's really nasty outside, there's a chance that you could be negatively impacting like the last mile cabling that's, bringing you into the connection. That's probably where the issue lies more than it lies on the data center side.
Over the last couple of years, I've learned how insanely valuable the last mile is in so many different areas, right?
Oh, yeah.
When they talk about deliveries, it's the last mile where all of the cost is.
Oh, yeah.
And those are things that just never crossed my mind. Now you're telling me in data delivery, the last mile is a factor too. Water, the last mile is a massive, massive cost. So interesting.
Oh,
data
yeah.
as well.
Yeah. Same with electricity. That's always where your biggest problems are. You never see like a substation that loses its connectivity to a main power trunk unless there's some catastrophic event. It's always a tree went down in a power line and it went from a substation and took out a neighborhood, so it's like, last mile is always where your issues are at. Now, it's not to say that there isn't the last mile on the data center side of things too, where there's like a backhoe could rip through a fiber trunk somewhere and, destroy a bunch of cabling.
So something that's been on my mind since we've had him on, if the OGs of this live stream, which isn't that long ago, but the OGs of this live stream, remember, we had a gentleman on named Pete Harris. And I've had a question that's been burning in my mind since we've had him on. And he is a ransomware negotiator. He all sorts of crazy things. And one of the things that we had talked about is, the conflicts going on in the world right now and the threats. And a lot of it has started to revolve around data. I want to ask Pete, when we talk about actual physical wires on the bottom of the ocean that I keep hearing over and over and over again in the headlines, what does it look like if an opposing country targets those and attacks those? And I don't know. Maybe we'll be able to ask him that next week.
Dropping that bomb.
So yeah. And some interesting bits here. Leo said, Death Valley is not just a desert. It's 282 feet below sea level. It's the lowest point in North America. That may impact temperature. I would assume so, being closer to the core. And yeah.
Wow, it's the lowest point in North America.
I didn't know that.
If you would have asked me what the lowest point in North America is,
Key West, I would have said.
What's that?
I would have said Key West. I know it's the southernmost, but I would have assumed that was really low too.
Well, it's not below sea level though.
True, it can't be. You're right. That's a good point.
Because it would flood. Yeah. So like for me, and it's probably it's probably going to make me sound like such an idiot. I would say something like the Grand Canyon, right? Because I think it's like a giant hole, but at the same time, it's probably up in elevation. So like the crevasse that you see there is probably coming down from a much higher elevation than it is going down below sea level, I guess.
Interesting. So the three lowest are all in California. It's the Badwater Basin in the Salton Sea, and then the Death Valley Salt Pan. And then fourth, the only one outside of it is New Orleans.
Yeah, oh yeah, I mean that makes sense. That whole place is under sea level, just about.
Yeah, and has been a few times. Oh, too soon.
We've seen that demonstrated as seen here. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna set you up with this comment, Nick. Today is the last day for Stuart. He is retiring, and today he's spending a portion of that. That's super cool. A portion of his last day before retirement watching this stream.
Well, it said Monday is the last day in the chat a little bit ago. And then was Monday the last day? Is he done?
Oh, okay. Let's see. Did I miss? All right.
Yeah, it says TJ, Monday is the last day. So that
Oh,
Stuart, that must mean yesterday was your last day at that was your last day.
or does he have a portion of a week left? Could it be upcoming?
Oh, I don't know. You got to clarify here, Stuart.
Regardless.
It sounds like either way, congratulations on
Yeah.
man, you will be missed. That's for sure. Just wait until we can get you to come over to the dark side of the world of consulting or something out of retirement. That's going to be the trick. You know, we have to somehow still absorb Stuart's knowledge.
Yeah. So Monday will be his last day. That's so cool, man. Enjoy the heck out of this week.
Yeah, man. Talk about short timer syndrome, huh? You're like just coming up with things to do that don't get you in the weeds too far.
It's so funny. So
it's like,
awesome,
I want to help
man.
out as long as it doesn't take more than a week.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I got a project for you. No, you don't.
No.
Nope.
Actually, you don't. You have a short task for me at best.
Right. And before we get on to some topics and questions, I gotta say the heat, the humidity, it's doing the beard well over there, Nick. If you guys don't know, Nick used to have like twice as long of a beard, and this is it just feels right. It just seems like your beard, and the texture and the density of it and everything, it's looking very Viking-esque.
Dude, I'm liking this length. I do.
Me too.
I think I might actually keep it trimmed up here for a little while, kind of hovering around this length. I like it. I'd like it if my braid was a little longer. It's a little short for my liking, you know, if we're going for Viking, you know. But at the same time, I like this time of year, like you say, with the heat, the humidity. I mean, I will say it is nice not having a beard down past your waist. It's nice.
Look how cool that is. He said, I'll continue to attend the live stream. And I think we can say without even having to talk to each other, Stuart has an open invite if we can get him on the show.
That he does. He likes being on the other side of the camera more than he likes being on this side of it, it turns out. But that's not to say that he won't, change his mind and decide that
as a retired man, you never know.
And once in a while, who knows? Maybe if we just start spouting all kinds of disinformation, he'll need to come on and set the record straight, That's what it'll be. He'll be like, I can't let this kind of stuff go on like this.
Right. Like, did you know all Stewarts are actually government named Stu, but they don't like it so much they start the nickname Stewart?
That's right. Yeah, you're gonna have to come correct, Dan. He's clearly Stuart. He's spouting bad information here, and we just can't let him get away with it.
Stuart, I will say I'm very gentle and I like to bring the best out of people and I make it a fun stream. And that's a genuine statement, not even being sarcastic there. I'm really good at what I do. Give us a chance whenever you feel up to it. We'd love to have you. And I say that because of all the things Nick has told me about you, and it would be an incredible stream.
It would be.
Awesome. All right. You ready to get in some topics, Mr. Nick?
I think so. I'm ready. We got some good questions that came back, and I mean, we've had some interesting stuff. We've had quite the week. I mean, between working on some new stuff and other things we have going on, some ideas people have kicked over to us that we've been kind of crunching away on here in the research and development side of things.
Yep.
We've had one of those weeks where I have not paid attention to much besides what's directly in front of me. So I only lightly have a preview over what's coming today.
And guys, I have linked in the chat our Instagram. I had completed a question segment on our stories this week where people were able to go on and ask some of these questions directly. And so if you want to be able to be more involved and stay up to date on the stream, please go follow that Instagram. It is only about this live stream. That is it. I put up clips, I put up questions, I put up reminders of the stream, I put up links. It's just a good way to stay involved. It's a growing account, of course, and it's just really to supplement what we do here, and it's already been valuable. So if you don't mind and you are interested, I would only want you to if you were interested in this content in this stream, go give that Instagram page a follow for us. Absolutely free, not even selling anything, nothing like that. It's just continuing this community and keeping people involved. So in the chat there, guys, thank you very much. Okay, let's go. And we have these numbered. We're just going to go right in order, Nick, if you don't mind here. And I'll set up the question, and then you hit the heavy lift, and then I'll kind of bring the layman's terms in where I see fitting. And so number one, on net gap retrieval. And last week we went over in detail net gap, you guys. Net gap retrieval. Last week, right there. Last week you explained net gap really well. Data you're required to keep, but nobody should ever touch. Got it. And I can't even make this up. So my wife and I walk for 30 minutes every day to start our day. This was our topic today. I was explaining data and explaining data that you shouldn't, and just the whole concept to people that don't talk about this stuff. It's so interesting to them. So that was our walk today. What I'm stuck on is the other side of it. When there's actually a justified reason to pull that data back out. What does that look like in real life? Who signs off? How long does it take? And can we kick it off ourselves, or does every request have to route through Congruity? Love this question because we did cover the other side really well. There's data. You're required to keep it. We don't want anybody touching it, anybody seeing it. We're putting it over here. It is secured. We don't have to worry about it. But what about when you do need to take it back out? Any idea on that, Nick?
Yeah, so it's an integrated process, and it's one that can be kind of, melded to fit the internal processes of the organization that we're working with. But typically, the way it'll work is there's a security team, there's a data security or a security team of some sort. Once in a while, it's data integrity. Once in a while, it can even fall into, data loss prevention and those kinds of groups. It just really depends on what type of organization you're dealing with. But there is a group inside of every organization that would kind of have the final sign off on data getting retrieved back from a NetGap. So typically the way the process would go is that internally to, call it, Acme Corp, right? They have data that's sitting there inside NetGap. And let's just say they have an internal workflow that requires people open up a ticket to justify what they need and to make sure that they can, to make sure they're allowed to access it. And there's typically just a simple approval process, could be an escalation kind of approval process that requires a couple of people in some cases. But someone would basically create a ticket and say, hey, I need to access XYZ, and here's why. It's in NetGap and I need access to it. And once it gets approved, that would go over to their point of contact at Congruity. And just like that, a ticket would get created inside of Congruity that has all the approvals required to be able to retrieve someone's data and get them back for it. So there's the interesting part about it is every situation from the customer standpoint can be a little different. So, there could be automated approval processes. It could go through an automated chain of approvals in a system like SAP or ServiceNow or one of those types of, platforms that people use. So there's any number of ways that it can kind of originate and come over, but the goal is to have a well-defined process where we know the people that are going to be requesting it and the people that are allowed to request it. And we know we don't need to know the reasons why they're requesting it. We're not the ones who approve it based on policy. Once it comes over approved from the right person at the customer, then we're able to retrieve it and get it back over to them. And we're able to deliver that in any number of ways too. Some people would request that in a piece of physical media. It gets sent to them with that data on it. Sometimes there's the requirement for temporary VPN-based access or digital access to those assets. So we can facilitate access to the NetGap environment for people on an as-need basis, depending on how they need to access the data. But everyone has their own unique requirements of one, the process of how they get it, and then the approvals that go into allowing them to get it.
So it's more so on the customer side than the Congruity side on those policies.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
that makes sense.
always going to default to their required chain of approval.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, has there ever been a situation where something like that happens and there's a ransomware attack that somebody's acting through that situation?
I'm sure. For us, that's never happened in the case of Congruity 360.
Yeah.
But in the business of doing this type of work, I would have to assume that there's all sorts of attempts from bad actors to try to impersonate somebody that's trying to legitimately access this data. But that's why there's some pretty decent checks and balances that need to go in place to validate where the request is coming from, who's requesting it, how it got approved, what sign-offs exist, kind of as long as you have a multi-point of contact process, that makes that very difficult.
Okay, that makes sense. Another thing that's completely transformed my perspective on life is when ever since we talked about finding the normal. I think that was with Pete actually.
Mm-hmm.
And just like that, and that would be a situation, right? Where easily would tip off somebody who was not normal if they were trying to request that information when they weren't supposed to.
Oh yeah, or they didn't have the right approvals
Yeah.
submitted. It came from the wrong email address. It came from an email address that was claiming to be somebody, but the name on the address didn't match or something stupid like that, right? There is a lot of there's a lot of ways that could probably fall pretty flat pretty quick. But obviously that's why those checks and balances are in place, because you're protecting pretty sensitive information.
Yeah, and I love G Squared's analogy here, or his reference here. He said, "This is old school, but I used to work for an OC health clinic, and every now and then we had to physically go retrieve actual files from closed claims to reopen and kept them off site." And he said that would be a digital thing now. Yes, I mean, think about like cold cases, and think about in the medical world, we've all seen those file rooms where they have all the files and stuff, and we have this. The times have shifted, and there's still time and place, I think, for that currently. But all of that is now digital and has quite literally created the demand for a company like Congruity because of that, because it's not physical, go get that paper and go hand it to them anymore.
Well, so what's interesting too is there is still, to speak to G Squared, like the old school way of doing things. My first job at Cisco back in the 90s was actually working in the data integrity group, and we were responsible for data integrity in the sense of backups and restores. So we would back things up, and when people lost something or something got corrupted, it was our responsibility to retrieve it and restore it and make it come back to the last known good state. And so we did that with backup tapes. They're like literally physical black tapes with magnetic tape inside of them that looks like a VHS tape almost.
Okay.
And believe it or not, that trend is actually, I was just talking to OD about this the other day, I think, and that trend is coming back. So like the idea of putting something on a physical tape and then taking that and putting it in a safe and storing it, and then sending those tapes off site with a company like Iron Mountain or Recall or one of those places, that's still a huge business. It never went away, and it's actually coming back into trend, it seems like, based on some things that we've been seeing happen lately. But G Squared, that's actually not that far removed from what people are doing now. I mean, they're still backing stuff up on tape, and then someone shows up in a van. They collect the boxes, the little metal lock boxes with the padlocks on them for tapes, and they bring them and put them off site in a big warehouse that's full of secure storage. And you can bring those things back and restore off of them whenever you need to. But that was in the 90s. That was true then, and it's still heavily in use now. Not all of that stuff is happening, digitally, so to speak, or over the wire, over the internet. There's still the need for physical data separation still.
That makes sense. Super interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. A funny story, if we want to go down memory lane really quick here. One of my biggest claims to fame while working as a teenager at Cisco was my job every night was to go through and look for these backup tapes in the data center. What I mean by look for them is it's kind of like little Easter egg hunt every night, where I had those old library carts that hold books that you used to see in the libraries at school. So I had a library cart, and I would go through the data center and I'd look for tape drives that had red lights on them. I'd hit the eject button. I'd take the tape, put it in the cart, put a new tape in the drive, and hit the green button.
Nice.
And that was my job. And I walked around all night and did it. And that was what I did. And then I took those tapes, and my responsibility was to take that library cart, go to the loading dock. We had a big bunch of these huge safes. They were like commercial refrigerator sized bank vault like safes. And I had to sort these tapes by 6-digit barcode numerical order. And I had to put them in the safe, take the tapes that were in the safe, put them in a different box, and send those offsite. So that was my daily routine. Go collect the tapes, sort the tapes, store the tapes, send out the old ones. Well, this was back when I smoked cigarettes, and I was out to go take a cigarette break. And I had my full library cart full of tapes.
I know this one.
So I'm like, where am I going to put these tapes when I go outside to smoke? And so I had to find a place that was safe to stash these things, right? I couldn't just leave them out. So I had my badge, my little beep, beep, door badge. And so I just was walking down the hallway looking for a door that opened with the beep and was going to store my tapes. So I did. I stored them, and I went and did my thing and came back in and got the tapes and went and sorted them and went about my day. Well, about 2-3 months goes by, and we had to order some tapes from offsite, and they had to come back, and we were going to restore files from them. Well, the tapes were blank, and we pulled back another batch of tapes, and they were blank. And so I remember with my manager, keep in mind, guys, I was like 17 at the time here.
Literally.
So I went and, my manager gets involved, and we're like, can't figure out what happened. And we figure out like what happened, about when it was that these tapes would have come out of the data center. And he's like, well, walk me through what happened with this batch of tapes. And I was like, well, just same as everything else. Same as every other batch of tapes. I'm like, oh, well, I did go out and smoke and stored them in the storage room down the hallway for, I don't know, about 15 minutes. And I went back and got them. And he's like, well, show me the storage room. So we went, found the storage room, and I beeped my way into it, and we opened the door. And lo and behold, we figured out why all the tapes were blank as soon as the door swung open. At least my manager did. Is on the ground behind that door, there's this tape on the floor, not backup tape, that's like sticky, like, tape.
Okay.
Packing tape, like duct tape, except it was yellow and black / duct tape, and it was on the floor, and it created this boundary inside the room. And I know there's probably like Leo and OD
Pulling
and G squared, and we got Stuart, and they're all just shaking their heads like this right now, because what I didn't know, and what these guys probably do know, is that tape is called a degaussing line, and it's degaussing tape. So it marks off an area that is full of magnetic interference. And degaussing means to demagnetize something. So what happens to magnetic backup tapes when you put them in a room full of magnetic energy? Well, they go blank. It turns out that room was the mechanical room for the hydrostatic electric elevator shaft that was on the other side of the wall from that room. So every time the elevator kicked on its generator, it creates all kinds of magnetic energy. And behind that room, your watch stops when you go in that room if you have a mechanical watch, because it just freezes the hands in place from the magnetic force that's in the room.
Wow.
So yes, it is still widely in use, and this is why you need to be extra careful watching your 17-year-olds when you entrust them with large library carts of backup tapes, because they might inadvertently delete them.
Oh, it's like when you're a kid and your parents taped over a tape that you had, and you're like, I just wanted to watch Charlie Brown. Why is the Lions Thanksgiving football game on here? They lost. And if I may, side story here that relates to Leo's question and unbelievably relates to storing bad data. So Leo said salt mines have been popular offsite tape data storage. Is that still the case? Yes. And I can tell you, at least the government, that is the case, because fun, quick story, guys. I'll make it very short. Last year, I went to go purchase a vehicle, and I went with my same car dealer. They went to go run the financial report, right, to make sure the credit report, to make sure that I could buy this vehicle. He calls me. He's like, "Hey, did something happen?" I'm like, "No, what's up?" He's like, "The bank won't find you. Like, you're not here." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "They cannot pull up your social security number. They can't pull up your name." He's like, "Oh, weird." So he got up to a higher person. Finally, they realize somehow, some way, for 3 months, I, Daniel Command, had been marked deceased by the federal government. My social security number was off, was gone. I did not exist in the government's eyes for 3 months. And so this is right before the start of the year. This is like December 30th, December 29th. And they're like, please go to your social security office now. We really need to get this figured out before the end of the year. And they're going to give you a hard time. Let me give you a heads up. And I live near Flint, Michigan. My closest social security branch is in the heart of Flint, Michigan. Paint that picture. If you don't know, very tough area. They're like, they're going to give you a hard time. You need to tell them, and I forget the verbiage, but they need to tell them it's like a crucial, like, life situation, and then they'll take care of you. I'm like, okay. So we go in. somebody with my social security number, my taxes, my credit cards, my banking, my everything tied to that. Somebody, and this was their exact explanation, somebody fat fingered my number by mistake when someone else reported a spouse dead. They put in my number and marked me dead while that other person who actually was deceased was still living for 3 months. They marked me dead. And then here's the best part. They said, "You're lucky." And I go, "Excuse me?" And they were like, "You just need to go to your bank. You need to be here. You need to go give these. I'm going to give you like stamped and sealed letters to go give to your bank, to the car dealership, to give to your tax person. Go give this, here, that." I'm like, how am I lucky that someone fat fingered my social security number and now I have to go do all these things and my day is now completely shot, let alone they also gave me a free year of credit monitoring because they're like, "You need to make sure your credit's okay." I'm like, "I'm so lucky." And I was like, "How am I lucky, ma'am?" She goes, "Up until this year, you would have to come back and renew every single year. And the issue was all of these files were stored physically in a salt mine where somebody would have to go into the salt mine, pull your physical data, and you'd have to go through this process every year because of that." And I was like, "Are you kidding?" She goes, "No, we have actual salt mines." And sometimes it was like in a mountain and stuff, like it would look like a tunnel.
Yeah.
And they're like, people's jobs are to physically go walk down these salt mines through the system and pull out the files out of it. And I was like, that's crazy. That's how this, and he said, this is the first year where it's gone digital. I'm like, well, it's good and bad. He fat fingered it because it's digital. And so, yeah, that was my bad data that got out there and got changed, and it was because of their data management system that really messed it up.
I wonder how many people go in there and hear that process and they're just like, "Nah, never mind."
Right.
And they're
Right.
like, "Well, no, you're accidentally marked dead. You have to go through it." And be like, "No, you have to go through it. I don't think I have to go through anything."
I didn't do anything. So yeah, talking about bad data. This was just 6 months ago, guys. This was, very, very, very recent. So
That's crazy.
Interesting. So yeah, Leo, you are right. You are right. All right.
Crazy.
Number 2 on agentless but file system. You sold me on the no agent thing. So we went into this last year, right? Last week, no agent with Viking using NetFlow to see who talks to who. And I loved that discussion about what it wasn't looking for, what it didn't care about seeing. It just focused on who talks to who. But then you said it also looks at the file system down to the bits and bytes and correlate it to the network traffic. How are you seeing inside the file system without something installed on those machines? If you are agentless, how are you doing that? Yes, that's the part I can't square. Isn't it exactly where you would need an agent?
I mean, awesome question. So, there's the way we do that is connecting in and tying into storage controllers is the short answer. And there's a system we have on site that's responsible for brokering the connections to those storage systems. So I guess if you wanted to get really nitpicky, could you call that an agent? Kind of. It's like a piece of code that runs on a system that's a dedicated platform that brokers connections to storage controllers. So it's different than like a traditional agent would be. It's why we say agentless, because it's its own standalone kind of piece of appliance. So virtual appliance. But to answer that question in some detail is basically what we're able to do. Traditional agents would want to live on every machine where users live, right? They'd want to be on every server where data is stored. It'd be a piece of code as a separate piece of executable that's running on every user and server-based, consumer and provider-based system. And so in our world, we're capturing NetFlow traffic from the network, right? So the network is feeding us that telemetry data or that metadata. It's kind of what we talked about last week. For anyone who wasn't watching, we talked about how it's kind of like the informed delivery on your mail. Where it can say that, like, here's an envelope is coming and here's who it's from and here's who it's to. You don't know what's in the envelope, but you know that it's a piece of paper. You know that it's an envelope. It's flat. It's not a box. And here's who it's to and who it's from. That's very similar to NetFlow data. So we take that. And then we have another system that's running inside the environment. And what this system does is it acts like a broker to the storage controllers to get reads and writes information about what's being read and written to the file system of a given storage controller. And what I mean by storage controller here, for anyone who doesn't know, is that like when you access a file somewhere, there's a big system of disks of storage, that's sitting somewhere. Right. And it stores that stuff. And there's something called a storage controller that's responsible for basically reading and writing to that file structure. And if we talk to that storage controller, we can get information about the files that are being read and written and who is interacting with them and how. And what we do then is really quickly on the back end is we stitch that information together really quickly. So we take the information from the net flow and we see that this system is talking to this system here. There's traffic that exists there. And at that same moment in time, we had this user accessing this file. So we know that that session over here on the network was tied to this user accessing those files on a certain storage controller. So it's very, very fast pairing of information. And we combine it together in a table, in a database, and we're able to reference it and build the whole story. So just like each of those things is kind of like a breadcrumb trail, it's a page out of a book. And in our database on the back end is responsible for assembling all those pages into a story. And when you read that story, you get the end-to-end picture of who was talking to who and what they did when they got there.
Okay. And Stuart asked a simple question that I think you led the answer there. He said, isn't that more of a listener than an agent? If they asked about
exactly
no agent? Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why I'm kind of calling it like referring to it as like a broker, right? I mean, it's what's sitting there and connecting to the storage controller and giving us the read and write information. Now, if that was a Windows file server and we had like a piece of code that was living on that Windows server installed to watch the session connections come through, then that would be an agent method of doing that, right? But Stuart's absolutely right. That's a collector more than it is anything else. It's an on-site presence into the environment that gives us access into those storage environments.
Makes sense. That's simple. I like that. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah. But the trick is really that matching of information really quickly. The agent would normally do that for you, but since we don't have those and we don't run agents, we do some pretty tricky reassembly after the fact.
Love it. On metadata's blind spot, if Viking is only watching metadata, source destination, ports, how much moved and how much moved? How would it ever catch an attacker logged in with stolen but real credentials over normal ports? This is kind of that normal you're talking about. On paper, that traffic looks 100% legitimate. What's the thing that actually tips you off that something's wrong? Yeah, how do they find the not normal in this situation?
So what the attacker knows in this situation that this person's describing, which I'd love to know who asked this question. You have to shoot me over this question, who asked it.
Okay.
This attacker knows that the credentials are real. So the only piece of normal that it knows, that this attacker knows, is that the credentials are real. So it knows that's normal. But it doesn't necessarily know what ports are normal. It doesn't necessarily know what that user does either. So the trick for us on the anomaly engine side of the house is that attacker, even if they're using good credentials, even if they're going over known good ports, they're going to be doing different things over those ports, and they're going to be doing it at different times, and they're going to be doing it in different ways than that normal logged in user would do it. So if someone is a malicious, bad actor, and they're trying to get into an environment and they're trying to exfiltrate data, they're going to use those credentials for things that user doesn't normally use those credentials for.
That's
right.
The normal,
they're going to be accessing systems, and they're going to be doing it in a different cadence, right? And so for me, the amount of, even if they're on the same ports that a user uses, the number of times that they make connections over those ports, the amount of data that they transfer when they connect to those ports is all going to be different from what that user does on a day-to-day basis. And so that's where we spot anomaly, is the number of connections are different, is the amount of data transferred different, is the time of day that they're doing these things different. There's almost always going to be something different about an attacker when they start moving things around to exfiltrate data. That's going to vary from a normal user's pattern of behavior.
Interesting.
And
Now,
so really it's patternistic detection.
I've heard this, and I don't know if it's true, so correct me if I'm wrong.
Hmm.
You know I believe it's called and pronounced the CAPTCHAs, right? When you go
Mhm.
on a website and they have to verify that you're a human and not a
Yeah.
robot.
Yeah.
I've heard that isn't actually always about your answers, but it's about the pattern and how you click things and how you move,
Mhm.
which shows that you're human as compared to just like a bot that just automatically does it. Do you know if there's any truth to that?
Oh, 100%. So
Okay.
the CAPTCHA engines, humans make lots of mistakes. If we were to be put through a test where we had to score 100 on it in order to log into our banking website, everyone would just stop paying their bills because no
Okay.
one would ever log in. We'd
Okay.
get so many wrong answers, we'd get locked out of our accounts. CAPTCHA is made to have a certain variance of mistakes, and actually getting it perfect is actually the times when it rolls and it asks you to do it again. Because sometimes when it asks, when you do a CAPTCHA and then it's like, okay, cool, now solve this one. Okay,
Yeah.
cool, now solve this one. You think in your head like, oh, oops, I must have gotten those things
Yes.
wrong. There's a chance that you actually got it all the way right, and that's why you're taking it again, because it was not reasonable that you got them all right. So like next time, miss one on purpose.
Dude.
Don't select one of the fire hydrants and just see what happens.
No. How about the ones when they say select all the boats and then they throw in a kayak?
Oh yeah.
Is it a boat? Is it?
Yeah.
I've literally looked up the definition on some of those things, like a boat, and I'm like, I don't know if a kayak is a boat or not. And there's so much pressure right now on me, or it's like, click all the boxes with the bicycle. Okay, you didn't say the bicycle rider. Am I selecting where his head is at? Am I picking the arms that are going out in YMCA? Those things are meant to really throw me off. Yep, me. Yeah, motorcycles and it's only mopeds. Thank you.
Yeah, and you're like 0 next, and yeah, you know what I saw the other day for a CAPTCHA I thought was pretty cool. It was cloud animals matching the position of real animals. Whoa. So like it would have like a horse.
Oh, you had to move it
to the left. No, that's the puzzle piece drop one.
Okay,
this one literally had like it had 2 squares, and on the left it had a horse looking to the left or whatever, okay. And then on the right was literal clouds that kind of looked like a horse, and you had to make the clouds face the same direction as the real horse.
What?
And I'm like, wow, they're getting pretty creative here. You got cloud animals, balloon animal, cloud animals looking like it's getting good.
Jeez. And Leo says, humans making errors is why I don't let my iPhone wipe after X errors on login.
Yeah, that could be bad.
Okay. All right.
It could be bad. Your pocket could also wipe your phone then. It's like you get sweaty. You could be restoring a phone later that day.
Yeah. And Christopher says, I had street lights once and I missed a tiny portion of one that was in the box. It made me literally questioning if I knew what a street light was. Those tests are so pressure filled. And it is. It's like to get into my bank. It's to get into PayPal. It's to get into these things where it's like, I need to get in this thing, and now I'm worried I'm going to get locked out because I didn't know what the color fuchsia was or something like that. Like, gosh, give me a break.
Yeah, and you know what? You might have paid too much attention, and you might have gotten all those street lights. And because it knew it was a difficult street light to find and you found it, you must be a robot. So give you another test.
It's not the first time I've been accused of that. Jeez. And Nate, who worked for Apple for many years on customer service, said, I always really enjoyed those calls. Not. Yeah.
I bet those were great.
Oh yeah. I was just going to say there had to be some doozies in there. Some real good ones. Oh man. All right. We have 2 more set questions. It is lining up perfectly, almost like we're professionals over here, you guys.
Like we planned it.
Crazy. Number 4. On where AI this was my favorite one. On where AI earns its keep. Love the deterministic versus non-deterministic breakdown. I get why you don't want non-deterministic AI as the cornerstone of classification. Yeah, we get that. Love, guys, go watch last week if you missed it, please. So flip it for me. Where does AI earn its spot in the product? What's a job you'd happily hand to AI and trust, even knowing it might answer a little differently every time? This was brilliant question. This is how my brain works.
So for me, like a big one is the application of policy adherence, right? So like if you have data governance policies that dictate, what data needs to exist, what type of data shouldn't exist, and what type of data is sensitive that you never want to see in your environment, and if it's there, get rid of it, right? Being able to digest that very nebulous policy information and turn that into rigid pass or fail, right? To me, that's a perfect application of non-deterministic meets deterministic logic, where you have a very deterministic outcome, right? Something's either allowed to exist or it's not, right?
Okay.
Maybe even go one level up. Maybe bring it to where we run a lot of assessments and a lot of engagements where we have to go and discover things and find them, and then bubble things up to the surface that we need to review with the customer and say, what is this? How is this? Where is this? Why is this? Like those kinds of questions, right? Being able to bubble those things up as potential issues, but maybe don't match an exact, like an exact string pattern match. So you have to understand a policy, understand the kind of fuzzy logic of what it means and what you're trying to actually regulate.
Okay.
And then applying that to things that may or may not fall inside or outside of that policy and need to be validated by a human. Those are the situations where machine learning would be really bad at it, because it would either be pass or fail, and it could get false positives or it could miss things, right? Whereas if you have a non-deterministic logic of a language model, it understands something that machine learning doesn't understand at all. And actually, this is something that computers for a long time, have had a really hard time with, and that's understanding intent. And it's such a hard little nuancy thing to understand, right? Because as
for humans,
we understand intent in different ways. Like it's intent is very it's
subjective,
subjective, and perception can heavily impact intent. So when you read through a policy, especially when the policy is 20 pages long, right, extracting the intent of that policy is the important part, and then applying that to data modeling is something that large language models really excel at, and that's something that humans are pretty bad at, and machine learning would be really bad at. So that's where it would really fall into place. It's something that kind of may or may not, something that kind of straddles the line a little bit, and you need to make a fuzzy logic kind of decision of it kind of matches, but we should probably validate.
Okay. All right. I love that, because I was talking to Nick about this question before, and I said, I think even in more general terms, we're at a spot in society where we're walking through this balance right now. What jobs do we trust AI with? What jobs are just no-brainers that we should be using AI? And then what are the ones where we're still not anywhere near it, or we shouldn't be using it for? And that's kind of the chapter I feel like we're on right now.
Yeah, you're right. And I told you, I do let AI have. My rule for a while was that I didn't like any of the AI assistant stuff, or being able to use AI to complete tasks where I interacted with another human, because I didn't ever want to come across as, devaluing someone's interaction by letting AI write an email for me, and then have someone, just look at it and be like, he wrote this with AI responded to my email. He didn't even respond to me, but where I will let it do things now when I'm interacting with people, for example, is like in plain language, being able to ask things to book meetings for me, being able to say like, hey, find a slot tomorrow, invite this person and that person, and add a Teams meeting to it and send out the invite, right? And letting something do that. There's a couple of platforms that are really, really good at it. So being able to manage your calendar and send out invites and those sorts of things, be able to respond, is pretty cool. But being able to hit like generate response to an email, no, not quite there yet for me.
Okay. All right. And then our last set question that we have would be, it's a little bit longer, and this says, the tricky one. This one's been bugging me all week. You mentioned kind of carefully that there have been cases where security products' own agents get compromised. Somebody takes over the central system, and then the thing that's supposed to protect every machine becomes the attacker's way into every machine. Whew. That genuinely scared me. So my real question is for advice. If you're the person in the chair and you start to suspect your own security tooling has been turned against you, the tool you'd normally lean on to respond is the problem. How do you go get through it? Where do you even start in the first 24 hours when you can't trust your own defenses? Walk me through how you keep your head and what the first moves actually are.
I mean, so, okay, loaded question. And what I will say with this question too is we're going to answer this one in two parts. We're going to answer it once today with a short answer that I can do in the next 4 minutes.
Yes.
And then we're going to answer this question next week again with Pete and ask him from a practitioner's response, from someone that's coming in that deals with these types of situations, what his playbook kind of looks like. And then maybe we'll ask for some stories of times that he's actually encountered something like this.
And we did not have Pete booked before this was even cued or prompted, you guys. We booked Pete, 10 minutes before the stream, just so you guys realize this was not a setup. My absolute promise.
So what's funny about this is I'm pretty sure through talking to Pete about stuff like this, I'm pretty sure our first response is very, very similar. So I got a little bit of a teaser. I ran this one by Pete, and his first step is actually the exact same first step that I was going to suggest. And as a grumpy network guy, it's definitely my first response. And Pete's probably, when he watches this, he's going to be shaking his head, being like, okay, well, it's definitely the same response, but for very different reasons. And that is cut off the internet access. That's the easiest first thing you can do in a multitude of situations, right? If you have an active attacker, if you have, if you're compromised with ransomware, if you have a situation like this where your agents have been, adversarially turned against you, all of these things require one thing in common, and that's command and control. They have to have something that they report back to, and they have to be able to get their next step and report their last finding, right? So that's the way it's giving your information out. That's the way it's getting commands of what to do next. So really, the most important thing you can do is kill its ability to do that. And you're not going to track it down in all cases. You're not going to track it down, find it, isolate it, and remove its ability to communicate and talk home quick enough to prevent further damage, right? Your number one goal is to prevent the spread of that attack and to prevent any sensitive data from leaving your environment. And again, the best way to possibly do that, aside from having X-ray vision and knowing where all the bad code lives, is just disconnect the internet connection. It makes it so it can't send any of your information out that it's collected, and it's made it so it can't receive commands to be able to move through your environment and spread. So again, I'm really interested to hear about some situations where Pete has dealt with this and to see what has happened. Here's some battle stories. But then also beyond, like, what's step two? So if step one is cutting off your internet access, what is step two? What's step three? I'm sure it involves things like getting in touch with, if you've identified the cause or the source of some of these attacks, getting in touch with the vendor whose technology has also been compromised would probably be, step number two, right? But there's probably Pete's probably got a run book for this stuff. So I'd love to hear what he has to say. But for anyone out there that's watching this, that's like, oh man, yeah, what do you do? And to keep something in the back of your head, if something is being attacked, isolate it, cut it off from the internet, and remediate it offline.
I love it. And you've actually mentioned that to me in other topics we talked about, and you're like, you got to cut off the internet. Cut off the internet. I'm like, it makes sense. Makes sense.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah. You're almost suffocating the interesting.
Oh, that's absolutely what you're doing. You're starving it at the root.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a barricade, like when absolutely. Interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right, guys. Well, hey, thank you for those of you that chipped in and got involved with the questions. Next week, we're going to have Pete. We're going to talk about attacks. We're going to talk about protecting data and anything related to that. If you guys remember Pete, or you want to go back and watch that Pete Harris episode, if you have some questions for Pete, bring them on in. We literally want to have you guys continue to guide this show to learn more about Congruity 360 and all the topics that surround this great company. So thank you guys for watching today. Reminder, if you would like to check out our Instagram page, it's an easy way to get involved, to ask questions, to drop comments, and just to be blunt, to support what we're doing here and continuing to give this free content out to the data management, cybersecurity, AI world. We're very proud of it, and we appreciate you guys. So thank you for hanging out another day with us on this hot summer day. And Nick, any last words for everybody out there?
No, you better be back next week. It's going to be a good one with Pete. We're going to get part 2 of that last question and get some good stories out of it, I'm sure. But thanks for the questions. Thanks for the feedback. Thanks for the support. Thanks for watching.
Yes, an absolute congratulations, Stuart. We appreciate you being here. Enjoy that retirement. The next time we get to see you in the chat, you'll be a retired man. Awesome.
Heck yeah.
See you guys next week. Same place.